is right there on the second page of the basic book, or rather the first page, the facing page, if you do not understand white supremacy. So things will confuse you. So it's very important that people not be confused, because there's no way to replace white supremacy with justice if you're going to have confusion being the dominant factor in that endeavor. There's no way to do it. It's impossible. So anything that looks like it's going to cause confusion has to be extracted from a counter-racist code. Anything, any symptom of anything that shows up that looks like it's causing confusion, whether it comes from me or whomever, because that defeats the whole purpose. The white supremacists thrive off of confusion.
If you're ready, I think that's a great way to begin. We can go live if that's all right with you, Mr. Fuller.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Context of white supremacy. Gus T Renegade Justice in for another program. Today's date, Friday, August 5th, 2011. I have to snicker saying that today. We've been broadcasting. This is, I think, the third time that I have done a program on August 5th. This is the first time that I have said anything about today being my so-called birthday. Our guest for today did a lot correcting my thinking about the purpose of so-called birthdays, or just the purpose of time and energy, period. At the end of the day, it all comes down to what you are going to do with your time and energy. I make every effort to use as much of my time and energy as possible to replace white supremacy with justice. We're going to use this evening to help extract confusion. Our guest for the 14th time, Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Mr. Fuller, thank you so much for sharing a bit of your time with us. Always real appreciative to hear your views and to help clear up confusion. How are you doing this evening, sir?
I'm still learning.
Me too. I wanted to begin preparing for a broadcast this weekend. Racism, white supremacy on the job. I think every non-white person in the known universe can relate to having difficulties with racism on their job. When I spoke with you earlier this summer, it was real simple, not anything major, but you just talked about the importance on your job. A lot of times people get in trouble for being late. They end up moving, and then it's more difficult to get to the job. Can you just share some of that information about proximity with regards to your house and where you work at?
Well, that's just one factor. And when you have a job, you have to think of everything that will help you to be on that job and to be efficient enough on the job to hold the job, if it's at all possible that you can. You have to make that a priority. Otherwise, you'll just keep going from job to job. And in this day and time, that's basically what the white supremacists want non-white people to do anyway. Just run themselves ragged, going from job to job. Spending a lot of time trying to get a job, looking for a job, applying for it, making out all kind of resumes and whatnot, then get on the job and stay there 6 months and then gone and start the cycle all over again. This is almost a part of the white supremacist plan, because when you keep forcing people to move, and naturally if you move from one place to another, sometimes you even have to change. Not only, it's not just a job change, but you have to think about proximity to your job. The last job that you had may not be anywhere close to the next job that you're going to get as far as your place of residence is concerned. Now, a lot of people don't think about that. They'll just think about getting a job, and then they'll start thinking about, well, how am I going to get to work when it snows? Because even that is a big factor. Person, got the job in the summer, but the person wasn't thinking about, now, wait a minute, it's pretty easy for me to get to work in the summer, but when the snow is coming down, I mean, you start getting all of those in-depth inches of snow, can I get to the job? Now, people who want to hire you just temporarily forever, they have that in mind. Once they see your address and they say, they're not going to make it to work. They're not going to build up any seniority here. They're going to do a lot of work, and by the time I get this next project finished, I'm going to be in an excellent position to fire them because they're actually just going to keep coming in. I'll tell them that I'll do the best I can to help them, but I know they're not going to be able to make it here come January. When it starts snowing, and it snows in this area every January. So I know when they come in, dragging in, 2 hours late, I'm going to have to tell them that the senior foreman says, we got to let you go because you got to be here on time. You certainly can't keep coming in 2 hours late. And you've been in 2 hours late several times this month. Sometimes you've just called in, didn't come in at all. And everybody else is here. And that's not the correct thing to do in regards to even your co-workers, because then they have to help carry the load. Sorry about that. Maybe you can get a job where you live or wherever, but you can't work here anymore. That's what you call thinking ahead. But see, when you're desperate, you don't have time to think about all that. But these are factors that must be considered. And it's going to get worse before it gets better. Everybody out here who's looking for a job, it's going to get worse before it gets better. I've told people for years, people who had jobs, back in the days when I had a job, I wasn't even getting nowhere near the money I'd like to make. But I began to see that you keep switching around too much. Now, it works for some people. But sometimes you get in that valley and can't get out, where you're between jobs. And a lot of people out here grabbing jobs, and they grab the jobs that are available. And there are no more jobs available for long periods of time. And a person sometimes can be out of work so long that everything becomes unraveled, particularly people who are buying houses and whatnot. When they were riding high, they made the down payment on the house, and they're able to make the payments and all like that. And then there's sickness in the family, something they didn't foresee. And then they start calling in sick because somebody else is sick, and all these factors start creeping in. Next thing you know, 30 years down the road, you're starting all over again. So sometimes when you just latch on to a job, other things might come flying by that look like they might be good deals. But you got to think about, where am I going to be 15 years from now? Maybe I'll think about that. How is all of this going to play out 15 years from now? 15 years, 20 years down the road, I don't want to be desperate. I don't want to be out of breath all the time, grasping for straws. So in that particular area of activity, the activity of labor under the system of racism, it might be constructive to think along those lines, meaning think way down the road. How are things going to be later? I was thinking about that this evening just under the area of law, and that is many young black males, certainly by their behavior, are not thinking about 10 years down the road because they jump up and do things that make absolutely no sense at all. And like start a fight or commit a robbery or something like that. And they're not thinking about anything except, well, maybe my aunt will come and get me out of jail. But it's just not that first trip to jail that's going to be the nail in your coffin. That's the first nail in your coffin. But the other nails are going to come real soon or somewhere within the next 5 years. But very few of us think even a week ahead, not to say anything about 5 years. So a person say, well, I got in jail this morning and I'm out now. And that's all I'm thinking about. And I used to tell people many years ago, sometimes in some situations, the way the races operate, they don't want to hold you. They want to hold your mug shot and your fingerprints. And that's all they want. Now they have figured out just how long it's going to be before you are dead or locked up for life. They have already put that in their computer. and you don't even know it. And all they needed was your fingerprints and your mugshot, because they are going to hound you everywhere that you go. Those fingerprints and that mugshot is going to dog your steps every move that you make until finally you fall down exhausted and then get up and do something that's really over the top. And now you're in there, Shawshank, for good. It's all a plan. And that is being planned for many a black male. Not a job. They're not preparing you for a job. They're preparing you for the lockup or dead as early as possible. One way to get you out of the way. And then once they get you out of the way, start working on your brother. And nowadays, even your sister and maybe your mother, all in the lockups. Everybody you know is in the lockup. Gets to be home.
Context of white supremacy. Victim of white supremacy, Morgan Freeman, Shawshank Redemption. I think his character's name was Red, interestingly enough, the color red. Just going back to what you touched on with regards to jobs, I think you shared that you worked for many, many years, and just because of proximity, you were never late. Is that correct, Mr. Fuller?
Never late. I was 32 years on a job. I was never late. The reason why is because there might have been other jobs I could shop around for and all like that. And as far as the housing is concerned, there were houses that were much better that I could enjoy, at a greater distance. But I got to thinking about that distance. But I didn't think about it really. I'm not the greatest thinker in the world. But somebody called it to my attention. They say, oh, yeah, that's a nice place where you'll be staying while you're there. But if you get up to go on a job from there, you got a real problem, because that place is isolated, and there's no bus service, there's nothing in an emergency. If your car is not running, or if you don't have a car and all like that, you better seriously think about that. Just don't think about the nice place where you'll be staying and that nice job that you got. There's more to it than that. Things happen that can destroy all of that. So you have to sit down with a pen and paper. That's the best way to do it. And enumerate all of the factors in what job you have, what your possibilities for, quote, unquote, getting ahead on the job, how easy it's going to be to get to the job under any circumstance, how long you will have the job, all of these things. Just make a list of all the things you'll be looking for a very long time. Because most people, now some people can change, jobs for a lifetime, every month, and it doesn't even bother them. But that doesn't apply to the average person. The average person likes a degree of certainty, something they can count on, a degree of stability. The average person likes that. The average person doesn't like to go job hunting every 2 or 3 months. Some people consider that an adventure, but very few people think like that. Very few people can withstand that. They want to get somewhere where they can make a plan. Even the people who don't like to make plans, they like to make that kind of plan because to not have some type of idea about certainty, about what your future is going to be like, your health care, all of this. And just the simple thing like what we started with, getting to and from a job. That can wear you out over a period of years, even with the best of jobs, if you don't calculate that into the factor. What if the car breaks down? What if the bus stops running? Now, sometimes you think about, well, I got a couple of phone numbers I can call for people who I know I can depend on, who can run by here and pick me up in an emergency. So you think of all these factors. Write that down on a piece of paper. Aunt Jenny, she gets out and does her her grocery shopping and all like that, and she gets up early. So if I call her, then She'll come by and pick me up. She can get here in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or whatever it is. You got to figure that too, how long it'll take Aunt Jenny to get to you with her bad driving and get you to work in an emergency. And emergencies will happen. But just one or two emergencies can sometimes sink your boat. Because these supremacists in these tight times, and the times are going to get tighter, I do believe. I don't have a crystal ball, but I do believe they're going to get that way. I don't see any indications where they can, all this burden that's on people is going to lift anytime soon. So you have to think about these things, or should think about these things, in a compensatory fashion. Compensatory meaning making up for what's missing. Because a lot of us are missing a lot of things. We're missing a lot of things we definitely need right now, like more money. Got to compensate for the money that's not coming in. So when we do get some money coming in, treat it like it means something. That means that we might have to go a little, and I'm speaking now a little further than just the area of labor, which is mentioned in the book, but it's all within that same ballpark, you might say, that same area of interaction, and that is how much you're going to get, and majorly, how much you're going to spend and for what. A lot of spending habits that we have and built up over the years, things we're used to. You have to drop them for a while. Figure out ways to cut back. And don't be ashamed to do it. Particularly people who like to do things to show off, which should go out the window wholesale along about now. Buying a car to show off to someone who you know that just recently bought one should be completely out of the mind of every black person on the planet at this particular time. And even, I would say, even get in the habit of forgetting about that for the rest of your existence. A vehicle to show off, most vehicles look pretty much alike. How much value do you get out of showing off a vehicle that you just bought to someone that you know just to show off that you have a vehicle? Some people still think like that. That's archaic thinking. That should have been gone a long time ago because it never should have been in the first place. Vehicles cost too much. There's some people who are working 2 jobs just to pay for a vehicle that they bought to show it off. It's an excellent sports car, you might say, top of the line, loaded with everything. But when it's sitting out there on the parking lot, which is exactly where it's going to be, if you're, say, the average person that's trying to hold a job or working one job full-time and another job part-time just to make ends meet, that vehicle is going to be on the parking lot most of the time. So you're not in the vehicle. So a question is raised, a logical question, like what codification is all about, logic. How much is your vehicle worth when you're not in it? Just ask yourself that. And if you're not going to be in it very, very many times because you're just going from one job to another in it. And then you think about who's looking at you and how much are they paying on your car note. All those people who are looking at you as you go whizzing by. So you're paying for something that you're not really getting. It's just all in your mind that you have it. The parking lot has that car with its fees and the birds that are flying over it. They have a car. You don't have a car because you're in there working 2 jobs. Think about it.
Wow. Context of white supremacy. Our guest, Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. If you would like to get a copy of his books, The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, or the recently released Word Guide, you can type in the address tiny.cc/Fuller in all caps. I'll say it again, tiny, tiny.cc/Fuller in all caps. You can get the order form printed out, word guide, code book, excellent counter-racist material. Before we leave the area of labor, I just wanted to ask, you also said on the job, crucial to ask questions. Not even necessarily, questioning people about racism per se, but just to get more information about the place in which you work, other sites. You might get any kind of information. Maybe they have another site where you could work at. Could you share a little bit of that with our listeners?
Well, I don't really know. See, because I'm not, I haven't been in the job hunt market for quite a while. And I really don't know what's going on out here, except I'm hearing horror stories from everybody, particularly when it comes to so-called discrimination on the job. Might as well forget that. If you're encountering that, it's an uphill slaughter, really, of your time and energy and any little money that you have in yourself and all that you can borrow. It's going to be sponged up by people giving you the runaround. These are the latest reports that I am getting from everywhere. Same scenario. We'll check into it. We'll look into it. Bring us a couple of more $1,000 somewhere down the road 6 months after you first file. And I'll file another brief and see what happens. And then after that, you come in 3 months later and say, well, I got to have another 800. So it's turning out to be nothing but a scam. All of the so-called equal employment opportunity committees, civil rights divisions, all of these fancy terms, meaning come in and talk about it. It's going to cost you a fortune to talk about it, and you're not going to get anything in the end, except every now and then, and I think it must be computerized. This is just my guess. After we have 7,500 people come in here, we will pay off one of them and put it in the paper and play it up big. That they got a settlement of $300,000 after spending $150,000, and that'll be one person out of 7,500. And then they turn the computer off until they get 7,500 other people filing and spending money for lawyers and chasing around with great hopes that are going to falter. Now that's the picture that I've had, and not recently, not just recently, but as far back as the 1980s. All of these things that are set up to help people to get quote-unquote justice officially when it comes to race and racism and so-called discrimination, racial discrimination, anything that even hints at that. Everything that I've heard about is set up now to give you the eternal runaround. And in a codified way, what can you do about it? Everybody almost in one voice say that this is all about the runaround. That's what it's about. It's not supposed to solve anything except for just one person out of thousands every now and then. It's almost like pushing a button on a computer and say, well, this is the first day of the first person who walks through the door being given the runaround, and we're going to give 7,500 a runaround before we pay off anything, just like a slot machine in Vegas.
Wow. How do you, because you're in the D.C. area, Mr. Fuller, how do you see what they call the budget crisis and everything that's gone on this week? And I've seen reports they were frightened that the so-called U.S. was going to go into default and America's falling apart. How do you see all of this crisis with the economy playing into what racist man and racist woman have in store?
Oh, just to keep non-white people worldwide in a jerk-around state. That's all. So that's what I've been talking about so far right here this evening. And that is just hunker down and watch your pennies. And don't be too hopeful about someone running around at night and all through the day trying to look out for you, particularly in the so-called establishment, because they're not doing it. And we might as well face that. So if you are able to grab hold to what I call the niches, in other words, in every situation there are things going on where a person might get what you might call a break in the pattern. So if you happen to spot one, grab it and hold on and don't turn loose. So you absolutely have to, because everything will be trying to shake you loose from it. Or somebody else will be trying to find that same niche. And that's going to be the pattern for the foreseeable future, and it's all planned. See, they're talking about chaos and all like that. It's not chaos. It's all planned against the non-white people who are getting smarter and smarter. And it was easy to do when most of the non-white people on the planet were just down and out and drugged out and not looking forward to anything except just to die as soon as possible. And because they've completely given up right out of the starting gate. But you have a lot of non-white people now who are becoming smarter and smarter worldwide. In all of the places you hear about, they're learning skills that they never had before. And on account of the improved communications, they're in touch with people who can teach them more. Things that they didn't know or hadn't thought of before. Just a cell phone alone, in its own way, is exposing people to things. Very subtle ways and sometimes in a rush, all over the world. And so you have this improved communications. See, now the white supremacists are well aware of this, which means now they have to distort everything. They have to really improve their means of deceiving people and causing turmoil and causing people to turn on each other and turn on themselves. In other words, as old folks used to say, keep mess going. They are now in a state where they really have to be on their toes about that, and they are. They're working full time, causing more and more of what? Confusion. Because if you can confuse people enough, you can dominate them. That's anybody, even if it's just two people on the planet. The person who is the least confused is going to be the dominant person.
Context of white supremacy. I spoke with you earlier, a couple weeks ago, about the terrorism, the shooting, 76 people reported killed, the bombing of the government building in Norway, white person, Anders Breivik, in greater confinement right now. He has admitted to the acts. What have you seen with regards to how this event, this tragedy, really, event of terrorism, how it has been covered in the media, and how does this relate to racism, white supremacy?
I haven't seen very much except the initial reports, and since then I haven't seen very much. But the general pattern is to be understood under the category of one of the 6 strategies, and that is white sacrifices. See, it's been repeated. It's not in this form. It's something that's not historically the form that it usually appears in. These individual acts and all like that. Usually, it manifests itself on wholesale slaughter, and that is like, for an example, the so-called Civil War and/or World War II. Same basic pattern. Or if you want to use the fictional format, and I often use this sometimes to the annoyance of people, but I think it's very functional, and that is just a movie, Godfathers 1 and 2. Same basic pattern. People who have ill intent, people who are out to confuse and misuse and mistreat other people and make a profit, like what they call quote-unquote organized crime, and the system of white supremacy is organized crime, the biggest organized criminal operation that the world has ever seen. It operates on the same principle as Godfather 1 and 2, and that is white people sometimes going at each other, killing each other, plotting against each other. They did that in the old Roman Empire. Over what? Over who's going to be the chief exploiter of the non-white people, like the scene in Godfather 1. They all came around the table and they said, well, these drugs, I mean, they might back up on our own people. Well, I mean, you know, consider that collateral damage. But overall, it's going to affect the people among the coloreds more than anybody. So we can go forward. We have done our business plan. We have studied it in depth. Oh, yes, we'll lose some of our own children to this drug thing. But overall, it'll have the greatest effect on the non-white people, the coloreds. They're animals anyway. Let them lose their souls. That was a scene out of The Godfather 1, 1972. And that pattern is the same today. It's no difference. The so-called Civil War, even prior to that, was all about the same thing. Many white supremacists, many white people who believed in white supremacists, stepped to the table and said, I can't draw the water from the well. I don't have any slaves. But some of the people sitting around this table, they got slaves. I have to pay for the labor. I have to work my family to death on my little farm here in the north. I don't like black people either, but come on. I mean, you know, either everybody has slaves or nobody should have them because it's bad for my business. And so they say, well, someone, I mean, said, well, you know, that's business and, you know, you have to work that out yourself. And they say, but I have to work it out with you all. You're the people who are supposed to be helping me. You look like me. We have the same culture and all like this, same background. We've taken everything from the Indians and whatnot. Why can't we continue to work together? Well, some people get greedy. Well, you get greedy, then you're going to leave me out, so we're going to fight. So let's just get it on, and whoever comes out on top, well, so be it. But I'm not going to put up with this. Now, in a somewhat simplistic manner, I have presented what the essence of what we call the quote-unquote Civil War was about. There's no such thing as a civil war in essence, under compensatory logic. How can you have a civilized war? You're blowing people's heads off. You're running swords through them. Is anything civilized about that? The word civil is short for civilized. Whoever coined that term, it's just another way of running a game, of putting sugar on something that doesn't fit. But the white supremacists do this all the time. Their language is very important to study. But this scenario out of Norway is just a continuation of that basic format. Alexander the Great, years ago, my 8th grade teacher told me, history teacher, if I recall correctly, said Alexander the Great went around slaughtering people right and left. Finally went south, killing people as he encountered them. A great general, white, of course, and finally got to the desert and looked south. And as far as he knew, since he hadn't had any reconnaissance reports that told him any different, according to the message that I have given, he sat down and cried. Cried about what? Because there are no more worlds to conquer. You tell me there's nobody out there. That vast desert, there's nobody out there. I'll just be walking around in the desert. There's no people out there to kill. And so that young general sat down and cried. That's the white supremacist mentality. It's the basis for Godfather 1 and 2. It's the basis for Julius Caesar. It's the basis for the Roman Empire. Bring in the Negars from the south and put them in the Colosseum and feed them to the lions so that our great empresses and other ladies of the imperial palaces can sit there and entertain themselves. And we will make the Colosseum stronger than any other buildings, because that's where we'll be slaughtering people and feeding them to the lions and bringing in black people and have them be gladiators and fight the lions and then fight each other to the death. And that's what the great Roman Empire is all about. And that's what makes us great, and that's what we consider greatness as being. Not just building buildings and having systems of aqueducts and crops and growing wheat and tending our goats and whatnot and our animals and all like that. No, that's not adequate. We want to kill somebody. Because being a conqueror is what makes you what you should be. Depicted in the movie General Patton. Same pattern. All real Americans love the sting of battle. That's supposed to be an actual quote from General George Patton, World War II. An army general. In one of the opening scenes of the movie Patton, that speech was made. All real Americans love the sting of battle. All this nonsense about Americans don't want to fight is a bunch of nonsense, or words to that effect. That's the white supremacist mentality. Things are too quiet. Let's get something going. Let's go somewhere and kill some dark people. They're out there somewhere. It better be. Otherwise, what are we going to live for? What are we going to do with ourselves? We'll wind up killing each other. We love to kill. That's why we write novels about it, going way back. Edgar Allan Poe, The Raven, all about death. Go into the average bookstore, what do you see? Murder in the Rue Morgue. Murder on the rooftop. The body in the basement. The headless corpse. Oh, big glossy books. Some of them costing more than my book. All about glorifying what? Killing. Why? Killing is fun. And then they teach that to their subjects, non-white people. And then people wonder why young black males run around with 9mm, pop, 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 in the middle of the night. You have a society that nourishes that kind of nonsense. And then claim that they don't. Right in front of your face.
Context of white supremacy. Just paying attention to terms. I know with the racist suspect, Anders Breivik, in the Norway terrorism incident, I have seen reports where white people have declared he is not a terrorist. This is not an act of terrorism. What do you think about that? I mean, that's, in my opinion, very important use of words right there to declare that this is not 76 people killed. This is not terrorism.
According to compensatory counter-racist logic, when a person uses a term, you ask the person who is using the term what the term means and what the term doesn't mean. In other words, ask for a definition. If a person said to me that those acts were not terrorism, I would just simply say, what is terrorism? And then I would ask another question, what isn't terrorism? And don't help the person with the answer. Don't give the person your opinion of what you think the answer is, or what your opinion is, or what conclusion you have come about what the correct answer should be. Once you ask a person a question, let the person answer the question according to what he or she is saying. And remember what they said. In fact, write it down if it's important enough. And always remind that person later on that whatever definition they gave, it was their definition, not yours. Because if the definition fits, or if it makes sense, if it's logical, it will hold up over a period of time. If it's not logical, you'll wind up running into confusion, most likely. If it's not logical, because confusion is the enemy of logic. So the races sometimes depend on people having short memories, too. They'll say something and hope that you don't remember what was said. So if someone is saying that that was not terrorism, I don't dispute it, because I don't know what the person meant. But I will ask whoever's using the term, what is terrorism? If you're going to communicate with me and tell me that this was not an act of terrorism, then what is terrorism? And what is not terrorism? So I'll always know for the future when it applies to another situation involving other people under other circumstances. You're going to use the same definition for what doesn't exist and what does. Under similar circumstances, under different circumstances, what is it? And what is it and what is it not? Does that apply in all circumstances? There's lots of questions you can ask. And like I say, it's very important. Once you ask a question, don't help the person with the answer, because there's a reason for that. Later on, they'll say, oh, yes, we discussed that. And I made a remark, but you gave me your position on it and all like that, so let's go with your position. See, now you've gotten away from what they were doing, which is being deceitful. So they'll put it off on you. You'll say, no, I didn't give you a definition. I asked you what was your definition, sir, and you gave it to me. Now I will read it back to you. Now we go to that movie, A Few Good Men, when Colonel Jessup was on the stand. Said, you said, that was Tom Cruise playing that part, you said, and I'll read it back to you. Say, I don't need it read back to me. I know what I said. He's losing his temper now. See, sometimes when people got that swagger and whatnot, and you catch them in something that they're trying to pull, that they shouldn't be trying to pull, they get angry. That was a court scene. And that was the purpose. That's a lesson that you can learn from that movie, A Few Good Men, with Jack Nicholson and Tom Cruise. A courtroom scene where Tom Cruise was doing what? He was trying to get Colonel Jessup to lose his temper, and he did. And Colonel Jessup wound up being arrested as a result of him losing his temper in court, because he was so fired up with proving his point and got pulled in through the lawyer's personality rather than keeping focused on what the issues were, and that was the death of Private Santiago, that he started making mistakes. Anytime you start letting somebody pull you off your horse, as I say, and don't remain laser focused on what the issues are, the most important reason you're there. Once you lose focus on that, you start losing everything. That was one of the lessons of that movie. They show a few good men, I think, somewhere, all the time. Because in the system of white supremacy, lessons are sent to prospective white supremacists about how to remain white supremacists. And one of those main lessons, I think, is stay focused on what you're trying to do. Not on what somebody else is trying to get you to do, but on what you are trying to do. Very important.
Context of white supremacy. I'm going to hit the phone line. I just want to check before I do that. I'm going to check with Justice as well. I wanted to get you to share a term, talking about definitions and being codified. You have a term in your word guide, racial masochism. You write, use this term to apply to a condition in which a non-white person has become so accustomed to being extremely abused by white supremacists that he or she seeks, expects, and welcomes the personal attention given to him or her through more abuse. Examples: non-white females in their socio-sexual subordinate interactions with white men and in their social or anti-sexual interactions with white women during the existence of white supremacy. Non-white males when interacting directly with white men or white women during the existence of white supremacy find it easier and less offending to present themselves as effeminate or so-called homosexual, anti-sexual, and or as silly boys rather than as men. Non-white males and females, when in the presence of white people, choosing to interact with white people and or with each other in a manner that can best be described as pitiful, primitive, stupid, and or silly. Note, according to compensatory counter-racist logic, such behavior is caused and or promoted by the system of white supremacy, either directly or indirectly in any one or more areas of activity. Can you share a little bit more about this concept of racial masochism?
Yes, it just means that people react to racism in a way that at a certain point, when they don't see any way that the system of racism can be defeated, in one expression that is used, can't beat them, join them. So, get me to act silly. You want me to be a clown and in the office and whatnot? Get me to be the one person that has talked the loudest and talk all the time and being what they call the fly girl and whatnot. Or in the case of a male, I mean, the white supremacists may think that they are threatened by a real masculine male, a male who really likes females and whatnot, and is real serious about doing something constructive and all like that. Many white supremacists consider that as a threat, a direct threat. So the male, sometimes in a you might call what some people call a subconscious or an unconscious manner, starts acting either in a silly manner, minstrel show type, or becomes effeminate, even changing their voices and whatnot. You can sometimes see people on television doing that. I mean, people who are talking about serious subjects, when they call in the black male to express himself, he changes his voice and starts talking like he's a girl because he doesn't want to be offended. He's not even aware, probably, that he's talking like he's a female. If you're in the next room listening to it, you would think it's a female talking. And you come and take a look and say, oh, I thought that was a lady talking. That's a guy. See, so what it is, he's a little nervous about how his sexuality is being perceived by someone who may be hostile to him. And females sometimes are looked upon, depending on what vibes they pick up, from what they think the race's mind might be. Sometimes either go into what you call the silly gal mode, finger popping, gum popping, and or they become masculinized. In other words, I ain't taking no stuff off of nobody, and I can whip anybody in here. Ain't nobody gonna whip me. And I can be just as much man as you are, since I ain't got one to defend me, but I'll be my own man. And that's a result of the system of white supremacy. Those black females, the message that is sent to them is that you have no protection, because that black male that you got cannot protect you because he cannot protect himself. And I have feminized him to the extent that he thinks he's more female than you are. So he's out. And here you are facing me. And you know you can't beat me, even though you attempted to act like you're going to act like a male should act facing me. But by you being a female, you know you're going to lose. So you can just come out of your act. It's a harsh reality. But that's that masochism that I'm referring to. It causes people to act like other than something that they really are. The white supremacists always want that. Want you to get as far away from possible as what you really are, or what you could have a potential for being. That's really what they're worried about, what your potential is. They know what we are. They know that we're in a pitiful position. That's why I use that word pitiful. That fits us all. Fits us whom? Whom am I talking about? All non-white people on this planet in the system of white supremacy. That's one of the descriptions that fits us all, including me. Pitiful. Meaning what? Worthy of pity. I'm definitely worthy of pity. You can't be subject to the system of white supremacy without being in an official, pitiful position. In the position of a person who's definitely worthy of pity. You need to be pitied, and you need to be helped. I need to be helped. I need to be compensated. I have a laundry list of needs that will reach all to the stars based on what has been taken and what has been prohibited. First of all, something very basic like the white supremacists telling me in every way that they can, you cannot be a man in my system. You can be a boy, you can be a male, in the form of a boy, but if you are a male, you got to stay in that boyish state. Don't try to move out of that boy's category. If you move out of the boy's category in these modern times, I will allow you to simulate being a female. You can go twisting around and acting like you're a female and go looking for another male as a partner. I'll allow you to do that. That helps my business. What you cannot be is a masculinized man. You will not be that on this planet with me as a white supremacist. or I will eliminate you one way or another. Don't even start down that road. You can be as intelligent as you want to be. Don't you dare think that you're going to go from boyhood to manhood on my planet. It ain't going to happen. Not as long as I'm in charge. Now, you can remain a boy, or if you want to go from boyhood to something else, you can effeminize yourself, and you will be accepted. Don't you dare get in my face as a masculine male. If it's going to be a masculine male on this planet, it's going to be a white one. Period. That's the voice of the white supremacists.
Wow. I just want to get clarification on one thing that you said. You said when black males pair up with other black males, anti-sexual behavior, racist man, racist woman, hey, that helps my business. How does that behavior help the business of racist man and racist woman?
Because if you lose your, white supremacy is all about confusion. So if you become confused, if anybody becomes confused about their gender, and let somebody con them into saying gender doesn't matter. There's no such thing as gender particularly when it comes to you. Someone is telling you this and beating you over the head with it, with that doctrine, and you buy into it, either from fear or whatever. Then you have actually knocked the props out of everything that you're trying to do. Because the first thing you should have is the basics. And the thing that you should be trying to do, every person, whether the person is white or non-white, every person in this universe should be trying to be universal man and universal woman. Now, the biggest interruption to that has been the system of white supremacy, racist man and racist woman. Too many white people have decided they don't want to be universal people. Universal people meaning, first of all, people who are committed to producing justice and have actually produced justice. That's the qualification. You can't be universal man and universal woman without having already produced justice. So there's no one who's qualified for that. So what do we have on this planet? We have racist man, racist woman, and their victims. And that's not these people, none of them. Me or the people who are on the planet, if you go according to logic, are qualified to occupy this wonderful place that we call the planet Earth. With that type of mentality, the victimization mentality, which is what the non-white people are. They are victims of white supremacy, and they are masters, the white supremacists. Not all white people, but the white people who have the most intelligence, the white people who dominate, the white people who know how to get things done. Unfortunately, most of them are the most powerful ones. I don't know about the numbers, but the most powerful ones are those who believe in white supremacy. They're the smartest people on the planet. But they believe in being racist man and racist woman, when they should be believing in being universal man and universal woman. And that includes all the non-white people too. Universal man, universal woman. People who fit very well into this universe in a constructive way. Everything about being constructive. You can't be a racist and be constructive when it comes to people, because racism is about being destructive of people. Just the concept itself is all about destruction, building up to destroy, even when they build great things. And they do build great things, trains, railroads, boats, spacecraft that goes here and there in space. But if you're doing it under the banner of racism, It doesn't mean anything but destruction, because racism itself is about mistreating people. Why go all over the universe looking for people to mistreat? Because that's what you're going to do when you get there. Because that's what you do here, if you're a racist man and racist woman. So we should all be trying to be universal man, universal woman. But the first qualification for that is that a universal woman is a fiercely, and I use the word, or I might say intensely effeminate. Intensely effeminate, meaning very intensely attracted to the male species. Not just attracted to anything. All this trans this and trans that, and part-time this, part-time female, part-time whatever. That's confusion. We should be very focused about gender. Male with female, female with male. End of story. Now, there are a lot of people, and it's true, who, or as they say, are born this way. Can't help being otherwise. I believe that's true. Might not, but I believe that it is. Then there are a great number of people who are recruited at an early age. And it's something the old folks used to say. You snore in a bear's face long enough, you'll learn to like it. And I believe that. People can be trained. It's proven that people are trained all the time. People are trained to jump out of airplanes in a parachute. You have to be trained to do that. You're going to do it skillfully. You can be trained to row a boat. And you can be trained to go into a cave looking for a wolf for sexual companionship. I mean, that's true. A person actually, said, well, people are fine, but when it comes to real sexuality, I got to have a wolf. A person can be trained to think that way and be in tears if they can't do it. You can train people if you start early enough to do a lot of things. That's been proven over and over again. But what we should be trying to qualify for is universal man, universal woman. Not just be anything. But the white supremacists, almost one of the ancient definitions in a functional way for the word nigger is a person that you can expect any kind of nonsense out of. Here comes the nigger. Here comes the negar. Here comes the kafir. Here comes the sambo. What does that mean? Well, when he gets here, he's coming. When he gets here, it's going to be, you can just use him for anything. Send him in any direction. He's a body without a head. And if he has a head, it's a great big head with no brain. And if he has a brain, he doesn't use it. He's waiting on somebody to dump some garbage in it. And then whatever that garbage tells him to do, that's what he'll do. That's the functional definition for one of these blackguards, one of these dark people. They can't think. They refuse to think. They don't even like thinking. It hurts them. It hurts their heads when they have to think. They're body people. They're not mind people. They're people who like to jump up and down and spin around and stand on their heads. But if you ask them to use the brain inside their heads, they get insulted and tell you that you are wasting their time. So therefore, you do the thinking for them. And you have them doing all kinds of things and tell them that it's great. They don't know the difference. They don't know the difference between something great and something that's really tearing them down. And that's the philosophy of the white supremacists. And if you run into a black person that doesn't think that way, go to work on them and make them think that way. That's the philosophy of the white supremacists.
Context of White Supremacy, our guest, Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Justice, if you have some questions, your line is open. Before you get your question in, I just wanted to remind folks, if you would like to get a copy of Mr. Fuller's books, the Word Guide or the Code Book, the address tiny.cc/Fuller in all caps. tiny.cc/Fuller, all caps. You can print out the order form to get Mr. Fuller's outstanding publications. Justice, your line should be open.
Greetings, Mr. Fuller. Why did you write the code book first instead of writing the word guide first?
Oh, I didn't know about the use of words and how important they were when I first wrote the code book, but in a way that I discovered as I began to write it. So that's why, almost as an afterthought, in the first book, you will notice there is a word section that takes up a huge portion of the first book. And then I thought that would be adequate. But then I began to think, there are other words that keep showing up. That's why even in the second book, the word guide, I have some added pages there for people to write down words that they have thought of themselves that they need to look into maybe and ask questions about and use that format. In fact, they don't need to rewrite what I have written. They can just, because there are enough words out here that really need to be examined. All words should be examined. There's a lot of words in the English language. And the white supremacists use these words to support what they are already doing. Words are a form of running your business. And the business of white supremacy, the glue that holds the whole system together, is mostly words, because you have to have words if you're going to talk to people and deceive people. So you use words as tools to do this. So in order to counter what the white supremacists are doing, you first study the way that they use words, and then you come up with compensatory definitions for the same words, because otherwise you have to come up with another language, in which case if you come up with another language, no one will understand what you're saying, and you won't be able to communicate at all. You can communicate with yourself, but that's not the intention for inventing words. You invent words so you can communicate with other people. And so that's why I made an additional book called a Word Guide that is designed to help a person as a beginning. See, it's not a finished book, because a finished book would take in all of the words that are in the English language now and all of the words that will show up in the English language in what we call the English language. Because there are new words and new terms and new definitions that are formed, I'll say at least every year, maybe dozens of them. There are words that appear in standard dictionaries now. I'll say in a dictionary that is printed today of the English language, these words didn't even exist 15 or 20 years ago. Some of these words, I guess, if you really start tracking them, would run into the hundreds of words. So there's no such thing as a completed word guide, a completed word list. So that's why I call it just a word guide, not a complete list. And so I just picked out certain strategic words, words that I think are very important along about now. But every person should be aware, each and every day, wherever you are, when people are talking. Like in this discussion tonight, we talked about the word terrorism. Now, that is in the code book. Terrorism just means you cause somebody to be afraid. Now, for someone to say to me, what is my definition of terrorism, I just say causing fear, causing intense fear. And that is the standard definition that is used already. But the master terrorists, and I have that term in the book, are the white supremacists. They are the masters of terrorism. In other words, they make people more fearful than any other organism in the form of people on this planet. The non-white people of this planet are more fearful of the white supremacists than they are of anybody. Black people in this area of the world and whatnot, they're not scared of each other at all. That's why it's so easy for black people to just kill each other wholesale. And in most places in the world, they'll just run around killing black people for fun. Why? There's nothing to fear. Black people don't fear each other. They really don't. They go looking for each other. They trade shots, 9mm popping in the night, sometimes in the day, all up and down the street, all over the hood, you might say. But the white supremacists come around and say, "You're disturbing my sleep, boys. Stop this shooting, or I'm going to start shooting." That's when everybody gets quiet. Tell the truth.
Have you seen the film Gentleman's Agreement? If so, are there any lessons that you recall from the film?
I didn't actually hear the question.
The question is, have you seen the film Gentleman's Agreement? If so, are there any lessons that you recall from the film?
Well, maybe I heard the question, but I don't understand it. Maybe somebody can help me now.
I believe the question is, have you seen the film Gentleman's Agreement? Gregory Peck, I believe 1949, I believe. With the
yes.
Okay.
I've seen that film.
Okay. And she said if there are any lessons.
I don't remember a lot about it, but I remember some things about it.
Okay.
And was there another part of that same question, other than have I seen the film?
Are there any lessons that you recall from the film?
Yes. I think the lesson was about a person who was classified in a religious context. I think Gregory Peck played the part of the character, and I think he was a Jewish person who was having problems, I think checking into a hotel in one scene, and in other scenes too. I think that's basically what it was about. It was a religious matter.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way the code would look at it. And you have religious discrimination. A lot of people who are of the Christian religion, as they claim, say that they don't like people or have something against the people of the Jewish religion. That's what I've heard for years. So I think this movie was about that. Conflict between people who call themselves Christians and conflict between people who call themselves Christians and people who call themselves Jews, based on, apparently, religion. And I think that's what the movie A Gentleman's Agreement was about. And there's a lesson in that because there is a lot of religious conflict on the planet, even between people who say that they are of the same religion. And there's a long record of that. There are a lot of people who call themselves Christians, but they will say, "But I am Protestant Christian. I'm not Catholic Christian." And another person will say, "Well, I am Mormon Christian. I'm not one of these Jehovah's Witnesses." And someone else will say, "Well, I am another kind of Christian. I'm the Christian of Jesus Christ and Reverend Brown." So that's that type of Christian. And in many parts of the world, for the most part, they don't go at each other's throats. But historically, there's been a lot of conflict based on just that alone. The names, the different names, the different so-called quote-unquote divisions among Christians. And most prominently and most recently among people who call themselves Muslims. I understand there's conflict between people who say, I'm not just any kind of Muslim, I'm a Sunni Muslim. Or I'm not just any kind of Muslim, I am a Shiite. And then there may be some other factions of Muslims. I'm only going by what I hear. These are things that I don't know for sure. I just go by what I hear and what I read. And there are lessons to be learned by listening to all of the arguments of all of the different factions, because there are many. I know for sure that there are many in what we call the Christian religion. That's why you have a different church on every corner. Episcopalian, Presbyterian, Amish, Puritan, and on and on and on and on and on and on and on. Sometimes they get in conflict with each other. I understand there are some questions now about some people conducting themselves in a manner that many, many years ago would be considered okay, you might say, for that religion, for the people who are practicing that religion, and that's the Mormon religion. But I just heard on today's radio where there's a gentleman who I understand is a Mormon, or a faction of the Mormonism, the way that it was practiced some years ago, and some of it has been outlawed now. Some of the practices of that religion have been in conflict with what other people say a religion should include, and that is polygamy, and how it is conducted, and what the ages of the people should be who are engaged in it. So there's a lot of conflict about that, even today, even among some of the most ancient religions. I would say particularly among the most ancient religions, because a lot of the new religions, a lot of people have never heard of, like C.O.W.S. or Falun Gong. To a lot of people, they have never even heard of these religions, so there's no conflict with these religions simply because a lot of people have never heard of them. So they don't argue about them because they never even heard of them. But there are lots of religious arguments, and all of these arguments should be studied by everybody. Why? Because there's a lot of religious conflict. But the system of white supremacy is the strongest religion. According to what? According to evidence. The people who practice white supremacy.
Even by white people?
Say that again?
I said, so even by white people?
Yes, the strongest religion among the people of this planet is
I know
the system
that.
of white
I mean,
supremacy.
Like, should white people study those those religions that you said?
The white people who are not white supremacists should study the religion of white supremacy. Because anybody who believes in justice or believe in not mistreating people definitely should study the religion of white supremacy, which is a religion that is dedicated to mistreating people. That's a religion that's designed to mistreat people deliberately. You can't practice white supremacy without mistreating people. That's a requirement. If you're not mistreating people, you're not a white supremacist. You have to qualify to be a white supremacist. Just being white won't cut it. You have to actually be deliberately participating in a system that's designed to do harm to non-white people. And that's the most powerful religion on the planet, because the white supremacists, by evidence, are the only people who practice all of their religion, not parts of it. Many people will claim, sometimes I've heard people say things like, I'm Catholic, but I don't practice it. Well, how can you be something that you don't practice? How can you be an airplane pilot and you don't fly airplanes? How can you be a person that fishes, You say that you're a fisherman, and you don't catch fish. It doesn't compute. How can you be a ship's captain and you never go aboard a ship? Don't know anything about ships, not interested in ships, not trying to learn how to be a person who can maneuver a ship, but claiming to have the title. People, this causes what? Confusion. And beware of any kind of confusion, no matter what the source of that confusion is, including Neely Fuller's books. Tread very carefully on anything that you hear or see that is confusing. Study it until you're not confused.
How can you tell the difference between a white person and a racist white supremacist?
Well, according to compensatory counter-racist logic, I can't. I don't know how. Except if I can perceive that the person is able to be a white supremacist, I still cannot say that that person is one, but I will say that the person is a racist suspect. I suspect that the person could be one. So that's the title that I use. The person is a racist suspect. Suspected by whom? By me. I'm entitled to suspect whomever I want to suspect under the system of white supremacists, since I don't have a list of all of the white supremacists on the planet. No one has given me one. I've never heard of one. So therefore, any white person that I see who's able to be a white supremacist may be one. But now that if I see that the person is not able to be one, if the person doesn't seem to be super deceptive, like a newborn baby, I don't think a newborn white baby is a white supremacist. Now, that's just my opinion. There are people who will differ with that. They'll say that newborn baby in that crib, if it's white, that's a white supremacist, and that white supremacist is already doing great harm to him or her. Now, a non-white person who says that is entitled to say that and believe it if they choose to do so. Like here again, I don't know of any master list, any reliable list of all of the white people who believe in white supremacy and who are participating in the system of white supremacy. I don't know of no such list. I've never even heard anybody claim that there is one. So I choose to just be suspicious of any white person who is able to be a white supremacist, probably could be a white supremacist. But I will never say that that white person is a white supremacist unless the white person, him or herself, says that he or she is a white supremacist. I never call anybody a racist, simply because there's no way to prove it in the system of white supremacy. The burden of proof is on me. And since I have no way of proving it, why put that burden on myself when I have no way of going forward with it and taking it all the way to its logical conclusion? That would be non-logic. Because in order to for me to prove as a victim of white supremacy that a white person is a white supremacist, I have to have another person who is white to back it up, to say that my suspicions are confirmed, which means I would not be the person who would be confirming it. It would be the white person who is saying that they are backing me up. They are the ones making the decision, not me. So why even attempt to do so? Why would I attempt to do something, logically speaking, that I can't back up and know that in front? just by me saying that a person is a racist, and I have no way of proving it, doesn't mean anything. Because I have to prove it to other white people. And if the other white people say, we don't believe you. We don't believe you, Fuller, when you said that Mr. Andrew Jackson is a racist. We don't believe you. And the reason we don't believe you is because we don't have to. And you can't make us. Now, how about that, Fuller? You and your book, all your pronouncements and all of this, that, and the other. And you're going to stand here and make a statement that this white person is a racist and then say you can prove it, and I'm standing here saying that you can't? What are you going to do, whip me? Because everything that you say has got to be proven by me, and don't you forget it, boy.
At one point in time...
That's real power. Hello?
Yep. At one point in time, why did Adolf Hitler and other white people consider so-called Jews as non-white people?
I don't know. That's an easy one. I don't know. And if I start saying that I knew, I've observed other people when they make statements like that they know. They really know. I've seen them.
What is the difference?
Have a problem. I've seen them have a problem proving that too. So I don't venture there, simply because I don't know. I don't know what was in Hitler's mind except what he is reported to have said. I can quote some things that Hitler said, and I won't go any further than that because I don't know what he meant. And I don't attempt to interpret too much about what he meant if what he said was vague to me, and that sounds vague to me. So I don't know what he meant. Someone would have to actually resurrect Hitler's body and have him stand before the world and go into detail about exactly what he meant. Because I don't know. It's very confusing to me. And I know one thing about being a victim of racism. You avoid anything that looks like you're heading into something where when you get into it up to your neck, you start having to admit that you're confused. Best not to get into something where you have to depend on someone else to verify what you think you know when you really didn't, for sure, when you're just guessing. Now, if you say you have a theory, that's different. Right now, I don't have a theory on that. So the code calls for me to say that's a religious matter of which I do not understand, because there's a lot of things I don't understand about a lot of religions. But I do understand about the religion of white supremacy, but not enough. I just understand there is one. And I do understand that as far as I'm concerned, it's the most powerful religion on earth.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fuller. I don't have any more questions at this time.
Thank you.
Context of white supremacy. Some people called in with questions for Mr. Fuller. Before I go to the phone lines, again, if you want to get a copy of Mr. Fuller's book, the address tiny.cc/Fuller in all caps, and / is the key. It's the symbol below the question mark on your keyboard. So tiny.cc / Fuller in all caps. You can get the printout to get the word guide and or the code book. Pam, Trojan Horse, you have a question for Mr. Fuller. Good to hear from you, Pam.
Good evening, Mr. Fuller, and good evening, Gus and Justice. Great to hear from you again. I did have a question for you, Mr. Fuller. A real common counter-racist position, it appears to be that black people or non-white people should not dislike or hate white people, and that we should not harm other people, including other non-white people, in our attempts to dismantle the system of white supremacy. I don't disagree with that because I don't advocate violence. But my question is, if we are engaged in a war, and to me being engaged in a war means you have an enemy, and if you have an enemy and you're not willing to engage in warlike strategies, which include disliking your enemy and possibly using violence against your enemy if necessary, then how can we expect to win the war against white supremacy? And that's something that I'm struggling with.
Oh, well, you just follow a code that's designed to get the job done. Now, that has nothing to do, that's one lesson, another lesson that is expressed. That's not one that I didn't already know because I had already expressed it. But I like that scene in the movie The Godfather where, in a counter way, you do the same thing in counter racism. Like the character called Santini was telling his brother Michael. He said, Michael, you're taking this personal because you were hit on the jaw by this police captain, McCluskey. Said, you're all fired up emotionally. He said, this is business. It's not personal. It's business. Said it goes with the territory. You getting hit on the jaw goes with the territory. Said, so you don't act on the basis if you got hit on the jaw. You act on the basis of what's good for the Corleone family. You don't just run out here and start doing something because you're angry. And that's a very important principle because black people let their emotions govern them, and that is a huge reason why we're in the shape that we're in. After the fact, we jump up in many a court and we say, well, I did that because that's how I felt at the time. And the judge said, well, because that's the way you felt at the time, now you're sitting here pleading with me to understand how you felt at the time, but I'm going to tell you with no emotion at all that you are going to be locked up for the rest of your existence. Now, how about that? And I do that without being angry with you. In fact, I think that you're a jolly good fellow. But I am going to lock you up without any hatred. I don't even know you. But on account of I'm going to follow the code that I have here on my desk in front of me and lock you up for the rest of your days at hard labor. And I'm not mad at you. But that is going to be the result of you losing your temper. I haven't lost mine. I just went out and captured you, and now I'm going to lock you up. I have no feelings about it at all. I don't even know you. Next case. Now, the non-white people should take note of that and have a full understanding of that kind of thinking and act intelligently according to that kind of thinking. Hatred is completely unnecessary. Anybody who's ever been a soldier knows that. Most of the time, you're shooting somebody you never even see. Ask a bomber pilot who's just sitting there, and he watches that bomb sight. And when he sees that bomb sight through those crosshairs, if you take the old-fashioned analogy, old World War II type, sitting in the nose of that B-17 or that Hinkle bomber or whatever it is, or that Japanese Betty, When that bombardier looks in that bomb sight, he doesn't see anything but a pattern of what he has seen on a map. And some clouds drifting by. As soon as he sees the break in the clouds, he just pushes a button. And 500-pound bombs go dropping through the air, right through that cloud formation or past those clouds. And he hopes that he has the same pattern, that he hit it just at the correct moment, that he's been training looking at a map. He doesn't see any people moving around or anything. But you better believe when those 500-pounders finally connect with the ground, its body's flying all over the place. But he doesn't hear the sound of the yells. He doesn't see the blood flying. He doesn't see any of that. All he sees is that the bombs have gone away, and they got smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller until they disappeared. And then he sees some puffs down there that looks like little flowers. But in the expression of military, all hell is breaking loose down there on the ground. But the person high up in that airplane doesn't hear anything, doesn't hear a scream, doesn't hear a yell, doesn't hear the sound of the explosions, nothing. But the job is done. A lot of death has been inflicted on a whole bunch of people when you have 1,000 plane formation and all of them are dropping 500-pounder bombs in clusters of a dozen or more in one spot. The slaughter on a mass scale. Pieces of houses flying up in there, turning end over end, chimneys, stoves, whatever. Babies screaming. People's heads blown off. Is this done with anger? No. It's scientific. Now, primitive people, they got to dance around a fire, get all charged up. And the people that they're getting charged up about, they're singing and dancing and turning flips. I mean, you know, the people who are getting ready to make this attack, these are primitive people. They got to get psyched up. I'm going to get the enemy. I got to get mad. The white supremacists sit right there on the hillside and say, how many of them are dancing around that fire? And they say, oh, about 75. Say, okay, position all your troops in a line where when they come up the trail, they're going to come up here yelling and screaming and all fired up and talking about how much they are going to slaughter us. And by the time they get to the top of the ridge, what's few of them is left. There'll just be about 2 or 3 of them out of 75, and they'll be wounded. Because we're going to kill them coming up the trail. Because they'll make enough noise because they're mad. But we don't think like they do. We don't need to get mad. We need to get scientific. That's what the white supremacists say to their army. We don't need to feel anything at all. We just know what buttons to push that will eliminate them, like a video game, without feeling anything, and have a cup of coffee while we're doing it. And that method has proven to be extremely efficient. That's why I say the record shows that talking about how much you hate somebody is useless. Better figure out what to do. Use that energy to use your brain, not your emotions.
Thank you, Mr. Fuller.
The
Just
person,
an opinion.
It helps me.
You are muted.
Back on.
You are unmuted.
So thank you.
always good to hear from Pam. Person who called in, Negrito's Way. Did you have a question for Mr. Fuller?
Oh, good evening, Gus, and to Mr. Fuller. The question is, how should us who practice codification or counter-racist logic in the marketplace deal with other black people that may not agree with it? And in your opinion and experience, why would other black folks not agree with codification? And I'll take my answer over there. Thank you.
Well, because most suggestions coming from a black person about what to do about racism fall on deaf ears, and for a very logical reason. No black person has figured out what to do about it. Or for that matter, no white person who says that they're trying to figure it out. So you approach everybody with skepticism. And that's healthy. That should be. In other words, there are black people who say, well, all the rest of these black people should shut up because I got the solution. Well, now, you can say to that black person, including me, if you got the solution. If I say I got the solution, you should say that's impossible. Why? Because if Neely Fuller has the solution to the race problem, how can anyone else have the problem? See, solutions mean you have done it, not you're trying to do it, trying to figure it out, because that's the only thing that I claim. I'm trying to figure out what to do about white supremacy. Now, once I figure it out, and I know that I figured it out, we won't be having this conversation because white supremacy will no longer exist. That's the only proof that a person is even an advanced student of the system of racism. Because either you have it or you don't. Either you have racism or you don't. The only experts, according to the code, on white supremacy are the white supremacists themselves. They're the only people who know what they are doing and how they are doing it, and successful at it. The most successful business that the world has ever seen. The most successful means of mistreating people that the world has ever seen. So I don't know of anybody other than the white supremacists who know right down to the finest detail how they go about doing it. That's what I'm trying to learn. That's why I always tell people I'm still learning. I will be learning. I will die still trying to learn if it hasn't been done. But that's my job. That's the way I see it, according to logic. I'm supposed to be solving problems. Now, if I never solve the problem, well, so be it. But that's what I'm put here for, to solve problems. The system of racism is the biggest problem on the planet. So why not go for the biggest problem on the planet to try to solve it, even if you don't solve it? So what? Why start with a small problem when you can say, I'm going to take on the biggest problem and see if I can eliminate that problem and replace it with something that's not a problem, like justice. Why not? Why not go for the top prize? Since you got to spend time on this planet anyway, you might as well be doing something that's the biggest job, whether you succeed or not. That's what I think that I was given time to do. I think all people should be in the business of problem solving, and the biggest problem, according to the evidence, is the problem of racism, because people seem to be, there's enough people to solve all other kind of problems. I mean, there's different diseases come and go and whatnot, malaria, diphtheria, and things like that. You know, they hang around a long time, and but sooner or later somebody figures out how to solve them. But nobody has stepped forward and says, I know how to solve the race problem, and then prove that they know. Lots of people talk loosely and say, I got the solution, but you don't see the solution. They're making a claim before they have proven their claim. I make no such claim. Why? Because this is a business. When you're in a business, you're supposed to show the profit, not just talk about theoretically what the profit would be. You got to be able to actually do it. I haven't done it. I don't know anybody who has. And I think that's why these conversations continue, like they should, until somebody comes up with the formula and actually pulls it off. Otherwise, you keep going to the drawing board. And that's not supposed to stop. Now, why is it that white supremacy is the thing that I'm saying that everybody should be concentrating on as the thing to eliminate? It's because that's the biggest problem. That's the main thing. You can't solve all those other problems without solving it. You've got 9 areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. The white supremacists are the biggest problem in each one of those areas of activity: religion, labor, education, economics, the use of time and energy and whatnot, sex. You can't solve any of these problems. Anybody got a labor problem? Anybody has a political problem? They can't solve any of those problems without dealing with the white supremacists. And the white supremacist says, oh, I'm going to be practicing mistreatment of non-white people worldwide, indefinitely. Now, what problem are you going to solve without coming past me? Because most of the people on this planet are non-white. So whatever problem you're trying to solve, whomever you are, you're going to have to deal with the white supremacists. Now, I think the other part of the question was, what about the black people who don't help? That's why the code that I have written, the compensatory code, is called the United Independent Code, where you don't look around to see who's going to help and who's not. You just do what you can do. Everything is tailored to you as an individual. What you say and what you do on a daily basis. That's what codification is about, whether anybody else is around or not, even to give you an encouraging word. In fact, you get away from the habit of even looking for someone who will even say anything nice to you, ever, when you're doing this kind of work. Because when things get real hostile, most likely you will find yourself alone anyway. So you get in the habit of operating alone. That's why it's called the United Independent Compensatory Code. You don't look around to see if you got a big army with you, or you got a cheering squad, or you got an amen corner, like we have in many churches, where people just nod. Everything that you say, they say amen. They agree with it. Now that works. In many religions and in many political things, it works. It doesn't work in counter-racism. And if you get to the place where you think you can depend on that, then you have defeated yourself before you even start. The United Independent System means that emphasis is on independent. Theoretically, you are supposed to be united with everybody who believes in counter-racism. But when the going gets hot, you're going to find yourself alone. And you have to know how to function alone. In fact, you should practice that every day, wherever you are. Don't look around for your friends, because your friends may cop out. Your friends even might become your enemies when the going gets hot. Depend on that, too. So you make your plans accordingly. How do I function when I'm by myself? Just me and my little brain, and nothing else to go on. But me and my little brain and the messages that I get from whatever created me. And that's all I have, except a code of thought, speech, and action. And bits and pieces of that might come from anywhere, not just from Neely Fuller. Try to come up with some bits and pieces of your own. The bits and pieces that you get from Neely Fuller, you can say you got this from Neely Fuller, and you should. But there should be some bits and pieces that you come up on your own. Otherwise, you're saying to the world that you are dependent on someone else to do all of the thinking. You have to do some thinking of your own. And if you get in the habit of thinking about that on a daily basis, when problems come up, you ask questions about how you can solve that problem. You ask yourself these questions after you ask everybody else, and they don't seem to come up with answers. Then you ask yourself these questions. And it's something about the nature of the universe that a question has a way of, the answer rather to a question has a way of finding itself to the source of the question. I think that's why inventions are made. People who invent things, people who invent a lot of things, they start with a question. And I think that the way the universe, and this is just a theory of mine, might be a theory also that other people have. If it's a sound theory, it will be a theory that other people have too. Because this is the universe. And 1 and 1 is 2 for everybody. But that theory is, when you put a question out there, just in your own mind, the answer starts gravitating toward you, because you are the source of the question. And I think people, great inventors, understand that principle. They don't have the answer, but they keep asking the question, even of themselves when they're walking alone. I mean, this, they might just lay the question aside sometime, get tired of asking the question, even if the person is asking it of him or herself. They just get tired. But then they come back to it, say, I still need an answer to this question. And you keep putting that question out there. Just keep putting it out there. Somewhere out there, as the song says, the answer to that question starts coming to you like a magnet. Why? Because you are the person that keeps asking the question. That's the theory, and I think there's a lot to be said for it. At least everybody who's listening to me now can think about it, because it just might work. I'd like to say this in addition to that. You ever think about this? People say many times, I just thought of something. Now, ask yourself this question. Where was that thought before you got it? Somewhere out there. The reason you got it is because you were thinking about having it, and you pulled it in. And usually it's in the form of a question. That thought that you had. You were trying to figure something out. And after about 40 days and 40 nights, it just came to you. Sometimes at 3 o'clock in the morning, when your mind is clear, and you suddenly wake up with that thought. I know there's somebody out there, maybe, who has had that happen to them, because it certainly happened to me. 3 o'clock in the morning, at a time when you are really asleep and you really want to sleep, and all of a sudden, the answer to a question that you have been pondering during the day, day after day, with all the noise around you, and you couldn't come up with an answer, and it came to you at 3 o'clock in the morning out of nowhere. Just like that. Just eased into your mind. And you almost ask yourself, where'd that come from? Came from the getting place. Where do all ideas come from? Whatever created your mind, maybe. Did I answer the question more or less? Hello, is anybody out there?
Yes.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. What is the difference between the people black and brown?
Say that again.
What is the difference between the people black and brown?
Well, different people have different opinions of that, and that's an excellent question. But the conclusion I've come to, and it could be an error, needs to be studied, is that all non-white people are basically black. And what you have are shades of black. Now, how black is black? I don't know. Because we just start at the starting place. Just pick out a person that you say is black, and then see if the person standing next to him is blacker than the person that is black. Or the person might be what is called lighter than the person that you just called black. So you would say that person appears to be, in the scale of things, brown, and then dark brown, and then light brown, and then light brown maybe, if you're searching for words, and then beige, and then tan, and then what some people call light yellow or dark yellow. That would come first. Dark yellow, light yellow, might even be something called yellow. Depends on how far you want to go with it. But these are all shades or variations of black. Why? Because the way the white supremacists have put it, within a political context rather than a genetic context, and that is anything that's not white is black, or a shade of black, or a derivative of black, because white has no derivatives. In fact, white is supposed to be a non-color, according to the white supremacists, depending on what they want to say at the time, or how much confusion they want to make, because they are the ones who do the classifying. They are the ones that tell us what color people are. They'll say, oh, that's not yellow, that's blue. And you'll say, well, no, that's yellow. And they'll say, where'd you get the idea that that's yellow? And you say, well, that's what I've been taught that yellow is. And they'll say, who taught you that? And then you will say, oh, well, I don't remember, but I remember somebody told me that that's yellow. I think I know yellow when I see it. And they'll say, well, they just taught you wrong, because I decided 15 minutes ago that that's not yellow, that's blue. And you'll say, well, how can you just change a color just like that, or the name of a color just like that, just because you want to? How can you do that? And the white supremacists say, because I can do anything, and you can't. And if I say that is what it is, that's what it is. Now, what are you going to do? You're going to stand there and keep saying what you have been saying, or are you going to say what I'm telling you to say? Or if you get mad about it, you're going to whip me? I said it's blue. You say, yeah, but even yesterday you said that it was yellow. I can do that. Well, why can't you do that? For some are white supremacists, that's why. And what you say doesn't matter. Now, how about that? Try that on for size and see if it'll fit. And don't debate me, boy. Do what I say, think like I say. Shut up. See, we have to understand the mind of the white supremacists. They make the classifications. The so-called original classifications in this area of the world were black, white, and mulatto. Now they got all kinds of classifications. I didn't make them up. They did, presumably. Now, I don't know who they are by name, but I believe that they had something to do with the latest census. I believe a white supremacist had something to do with it. Why? Because it's confusing. Anytime you look at anything that's confusing, usually they had something to do with it. Now, you have a classification called some other race. Now, if I went down the street looking for some other race right now, I think that I would be looking for days because I wouldn't know what I was looking for. Some other race, that's a description. I have a piece of paper in my hand that said, Fuller, I want you to start out at midnight tonight and don't come back until you find out a person who is some other race and bring them in here. I want to talk to them. Don't you come back until you find them. I think I would be searching forever until I drop dead. Why? Because I wouldn't know what I was looking for. But that is a classification. If anybody looks at the last census that is put out, a classification of a race is some other race. Some other race other than what? I have no idea. And I haven't run into anybody who can tell me. Other than what? Other than all other races, I guess. But what would that race look like? It's about 21 categories, I think, somebody said. So if I eliminate all of those 21 categories and I'm left with the category of some other race, what would that some other race look like? Since I'm going by what the race of person looks like or acts like or something, no description is given of some other race other than some other race. It didn't say some other race will be walking on their ears. It doesn't say that. So what would I be looking for? But that is an official category that you can actually put on a form when you apply for a job. I am of some other race. And no one can deny or say that you made a falsification, because when they look at it and you say some other race, and they'll say, well, that's no description of anything. What do you mean you're of some other race? And you say, well, that is one of the categories, and that's what I am. I chose that. You told me to make out the form to the best of my ability. I made it out. Some other race. Now work with it. They would probably tell you, well, you go some other place and look for a job.
Do non-black people get treated better than black people in the system of racism, white supremacy?
Do some people get better treatment?
Do non-black people get treated better than black people in the system of racism, white supremacy?
Generally speaking, yes. Otherwise, there would be no purpose for white supremacy, really. White supremacy is about people classified as white mistreating people who are classified as non-white. So naturally, the treatment for white people would be, generally speaking, not in all instances, because white people do, in the system of white supremacy, mistreat each other, but not on a scale, and it's consistently and rigidly in all 9 areas of activity on a daily basis, minute by minute, as they mistreat non-white people. If that were not the case, there would be no such thing as white supremacy. That would just be a chaotic situation where everybody's just mistreating everybody 24/7 with nobody getting anything out of it at all. except death and misery. That's not the case in the system of white supremacy. Substantial numbers of white people do quite well in the system of white supremacy. According to, by well, meaning according to the standards given. Comfort, having choices, having benefits in all 9 areas of activity, for the most part. If you're white, there's a lot to be gained from being white. Very few white people would want to be anything else other than white in the system of white supremacy, unless they're a glutton for punishment. Some of them are, but most are not.
Mr. Fuller, it doesn't seem like you answered my question. I'm going to rephrase it just a little bit. Do non-white, non-black people get treated better than non-white black people in the system of racism, white supremacy?
Well, it depends on what the white supremacists want to do. Now, usually the darker the person is, that person is going to be mistreated more, because in the white supremacist culture, the darker anything is considered to be something that shouldn't be. That's dark anything. If it's a so-called dark day, that's a day to be avoided. You're not supposed to be able to do anything or want to do anything. They call it sometimes gloomy. They have all kind of terms for it. But anything that's dark, dark mood, that's a mood that you should never be in, even though there's no way to photograph somebody's mood, I don't think. I mean, so how do you know the mood is dark? Why call it dark? They say, well, I feel bad. Oh, well, if you feel bad, you're in a dark mood. So anything associated with blackness or darkness, anything that seems to be of dark in color, like they'll say, you know, my spirits, they're down in the mud. Why? Because in the system of white supremacy, mud is considered dark. But there's nothing incorrect about mud. If you don't have mud, mud is a combination of dirt and water. And you got to have dirt and water if you're going to eat. The food would all disappear from this planet without a combination of dirt plus water. And the blacker that dirt is, as any farmer can tell you, the better it is as far as providing nourishment. Now, that's not to say that anything that's white, I mean a white sheet or anything that's white, is derogatory. Just because something is white, that's in the universe too. You know, a white sheet of paper, it serves a purpose. But what it is, the white supremacists have made everything that's associated with darkness something that shouldn't even exist. Yet they chase it down and embrace it in a lot of ways. But that's a part of their confusion, because it's a sickness. Racism is a sickness. It spawns all kinds of sicknesses. And anytime you get fired up about the color of anything, to the extent that you express some type of hatred for a color of anything in the universe, you're out of balance. And if other people buy into it, you get them out of balance. And then everything gets out of balance. You're subject to do anything that shouldn't be done once you're out of balance any kind of way. It's like a person falling down, I mean, in a shop full of glass. They're subject to knock over all kinds of glasses if they don't know what to grab, because they're off balance. and they're very destructive. The white supremacists, by coming up with the very idea of this thing called racism, threw everything out of balance. And people's minds and their motivations are all messed up, both white people and non-white people, all over this planet, on account of that ideology that there's such a thing as a wrong color. Whatever created this universe put colors in the universe: green trees, brown grass, then the grass turns brown, and the grass turns green, and it goes through different changes. The seasons change. The clouds sometimes look dark. Sometimes they look light. Really, they're neither one. I mean, that's the sun that determines that. But they look that way. Well, so what? It works. So if you get an attitude, quote unquote, toward it and want to destroy any of it just because of the way it looks, then you're out of balance. And that's what's got to change. And it's our job to change it through this thing called a counter-racist code, which we should keep adding to and improving until the job is done. Now, I'm going to be able to take maybe one more question, and then I will have to stop for tonight.
Justice, did you have another question? Or if not, there are people that called in, or I can ask one. We have options.
I have another question, if you don't mind. Is that okay? Or?
Go ahead.
Okay. What are some constructive ways black people can help each other?
They can help each other by making all contacts constructive. Everything that people do is either in the constructive mode or category, or the non-constructive mode or category. And how can you tell the difference? By the result. So people shouldn't even contact each other. That's something black people, as a custom, black people have a habit that's been handed down through the ages of contacting each other just for the sake of contacting each other. That should never happen. They should always have a constructive reason for contacting each other. And make sure that that reason is constructive before they make the contact. And then the result will always be constructive. It's a very simple formula. But black people, out of habit, do not want to adhere to it. I think that most black people, and on the surface, they're correct. It seems like it's too restrictive. It seems like you can't enjoy anything if you do it that way. But actually, I think that if we try it, we can get in the habit of liking it. Because a lot of the habits that we like now do not work for us, do not work for the victims of racism. So that's the most important thing that non-white people can do. Make every contact constructive and produce a constructive result. Otherwise, there should be no contact at all. Now, you can have constructive contact and be very pleasant and enjoy yourself. Very easy to do. All I'm saying is it shouldn't be non-constructive, because non-constructive activity and non-constructive contacts make for non-constructive results, and that makes everybody miserable. So why go looking for trouble when we already have plenty of trouble? But that's a simple formula that every black person out here, every non-white person on the planet, as of this minute, can adopt that right now without even going through any practice period. Most of codification is about things you can do right now. And that's one of the major ones. Don't get on the cell phone and call anybody unless you're pretty well sure you have something constructive to say. Something that's going to help you, or something that's going to help the other person, or something that's going to help both of you. And with that, I am going to have to go now.
Thank you for sharing some of your time with us, Mr. Fuller. Always a pleasure to have you on the program. And again, for listeners, the address to get Mr. Fuller's work, tiny.cc/Fuller, all caps. Enjoyed it a bunch. Thank you again, Mr. Fuller.
And thank you for inviting me.
For sure.
Good night.
We will. Thank you, sir. We'll speak
Hello?
soon.
Yes.
Oh.
Thanks again.
Thank you. Context of White Supremacy, Neely Fuller Jr., 14th visit. We will, Justice, do you have a news article? See, not hearing. Justice, if you're there, do you have a news article?
Yes, I do.
Okay. I'll play a quick audio clip. I think this is important just to recognize because we've done programs on this. News report from CNN on white terrorism in Louisiana. And once we wrap that up, then Justice, you can do your news report. This should be about 3 minutes. This was just like a couple hours before we went live on CNN today.
Well, this has been a long-running legal saga in Louisiana. These prosecutors were initially prosecuted by the state of Louisiana, and the cases did not end in convictions. So the federal government stepped in, much like the Rodney King case several years ago in California. State acquittals followed by federal prosecution, and here we now know they were convicted. This was a really tragic, difficult situation where where in the chaotic aftermath of Katrina, there was a confrontation on this bridge, and people were killed, and now the officers stand convicted in federal court.
Yeah, these shootings, they left 2 people dead, 4 others wounded on that Danziger Bridge after the 2005 storm. How unique is something like this, Jeffrey, for the federal jury to come to this conclusion?
Well, it's not unique, but it's certainly unusual. It is always difficult for police officers to be prosecuted. Most juries are sympathetic to them. Most juries feel that police are on their side. These are fortunately unusual prosecutions. As I said, this does have a fairly direct parallel in California, where there were acquittals in state court in the Rodney King case, followed by a conviction in federal court. It's fortunately unusual. Police are usually the good guys, but the federal government takes very seriously its obligation to police those who police us, and these cases do happen.
I mean, the federal prosecutors had said that the police shot the unarmed people without justification, but the defense, Jeffrey, had said all along that the officers were shot at before this happened. Do these officers, can they do anything now after this?
Well, they'll have to be sentenced, and they will almost certainly get some prison time, and then they will have the right to appeal. I think the key issue in this case, there was no doubt that there was a shooting here and these people died at the hands of the police. But the key issue has always been false statements, cover-up by some of these police officers. That certainly suggested a guilty state of mind on the part of them, and that's really, I think, what led to the convictions here. You know, if the officers had simply come forward and said exactly what happened, that might have made the jury look very differently than if they had made false statements, which was very much part of this case.
Yeah, there was the fabricated witnesses, possibly the falsified reports. They allegedly planted a gun. Do you think that's where they lost the trust?
I think false statements are gold for prosecutors because they suggest a guilty state of mind. And obviously we haven't spoken to the jury yet, but certainly I think that was a very important part of this case.
Context of white supremacy. This is The officers, after what they call Hurricane Katrina, where these enforcement officers were convicted earlier today. We did a report on this. A.C. Thompson, a white journalist, he was on the program in May of 2009, and he talked about a lot of these incidents, a lot of just really ugly, blatant white terrorism, where white people, he reported it looked like white people came from all over outside the state of Louisiana for an opportunity to practice white supremacy in its most vile form, an opportunity to commit violence against black people. I thought that was important to recognize. Justice, if you want to read your news report, feel free.
This article is from racismdaily.com. It was posted today, August 5th of this year. The title is Illinois Man Sues Jiffy Lube Over Racist, Anti-Semitic Photos. A Cook County man is suing Jiffy Lube, its Texas-based parent company, and an Oak Brook Jiffy Lube manager, alleging the manager made racist comments and transferred to another location when he complained. Floyd Woodfork filed a lawsuit in U.S. District Court Thursday against Joseph Gilardi and Irving. Texas-based Heartland Automotive Services, claiming Gilardi, manager of the Oak Brook Jiffy Lube, made racist comments and sent lewd, racist, and anti-Semitic photos on Woodfork's cell phone. My throat is acting up, so I'm trying to speak as loud as I can. So, Woodfork is black and Gilardi is white, the suit said. The suit said that on December 25th, 2010, Gilardi sent a photo of a female body part of a monkey with a caption that read, "This is what happens when white girls sleeps with black guys." On December 22nd, 2010, Gilardi sent another photo of a female body part wearing clothing and hairstyle common common to Hasidic Judaism, I think. The suit said. The suit goes on to say that Gilardi sent other lewd messages and photos that week, and that on May 31st, 2011, he told Woodfork, "You are in nigger." I believe that's what it means. And dash mode, and you should just punch out and go home. After Woodfork complained about a certain word process, Woodfork said in the suit that Gilardi and Jiffy Lube violated his civil rights, created a hostile work environment, and retaliated by transferring him to another location. The three-count suit seeks a trial by jury, $300,000 in compensatory damages, $150,000 in punitive damages, and court costs. Neither Gilardi nor a Heartland Automotive Services representative could be reached for comment Thursday afternoon. That is the article. Yeah. Sorry, my throat is acting up. My throat's kind of stuffy here.
Most interesting. Terroristic behavior on the job. We will be talking about that later this weekend. We have a broadcast on Sunday. Black female in England. She wrote the book Almost British. Her black husband will be on the program, attempted husband. White people prohibited her from selling her book, talking about her book, promoting her book. They made her take her website down. They did not restrict her husband, but she has a book. It is incredible. Just chronicling the trifling and terroristic behavior of white people on the job. And I think that should resonate worldwide. So yeah, that article reminded me a lot of what we'll be discussing this coming weekend. Do you have any other thoughts on that report, Justice?
I thought it was interesting that the caption that Gilardi sent of a photo of a female body part with the face of a monkey. I thought the caption was very interesting. The caption is, "This is what happens when white girls sleep with black guys." I thought that was very interesting. And thanks for the cowbell. I think that really says about it. Says a lot about that caption.
Yeah. Again, knotting everything together. That was on racismdaily.com. Support their work as well. That article and having the picture of a monkey face on the white woman. No coincidence. Today, we have been waiting since April talking about this. Pam and I did the broadcast back in May discussing the film. I don't know how many times it has come up. As I said, this is the third time we've done a broadcast on August 5th, and I have never referenced it before. The only reason I referenced it now is because I think that sort of thing lets me know that I'm on my assignment. The fact that I have not been to the movies. Like, just to give you a gauge, I have not gone to the movies. The last time I went to the movies, I was with two suspected racist white females who happened to be quote-unquote Irish. We were in Honolulu, and we were going to see Flight Plan. That's the last time I've gone to the movies. Needless to say, I was not on my assignment, and it's been a long time, but I'm looking forward to going to the movies in about an hour and a half. Dr. Martin Kevorkian, talk about appreciating Mr. Fuller's work. I got a compensatory investment request for tickets to see Rise of the Planet of the Apes from Dr. Martin Kevorkian. He picked up the tab for Justice and I to go check out the new film. We're going at one of the later showings so we can see a theater filled with white people watching this brand new Planet of the Apes installment. We have the program this Sunday. Eric Green, I thought he was a white person. He is not. He is a non-black, non-white male. He is the author of Planet of the Apes as American Myth, Race, and Politics in the Films and Television Series. He will be on the program this Sunday, August 7th at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. We will be discussing his book, the new film, the old films, the television program. I am looking forward to going. I do not think it is a coincidence at all that this film is coming out on my birthday. With that, Justice, unless you have anything you want to say about our trip to the movies to see Rise of the Planet of the Apes.
Wait, you said, do you have any thoughts on it, on Planet of the Apes, or?
Yes, going to see the film, the new one.
I'm sorry, my phone was beeping. Can you please repeat that? Sorry.
Just if you have any thoughts on our trip to the movies to see the new Planet of the Apes film.
I am very hoping to see how the white people function when watching that. And someone told me today, and it's very funny. Well, not funny, but very what's that word? Very interesting. Yeah. He said, I bet the white people, when you go to the theaters today, the white people will say, go kill or go get those 4 apes in the back. And I thought that was very interesting. So, and I hope that doesn't happen. Please, I really hope that doesn't happen. Yeah, I hope the white people don't say that to me or you. So.
We will report if it does happen.
Yes, we will. Yeah. Yes.
We will take notes, and it should be a great dialogue. I'm looking forward to it. And Josh Wickett will be back tomorrow. Josh Wickett, thecode.net. He'll be on. He has written a counter-racist film review on the 2001 Planet of the Apes. You can go to thecode.net, and you can go to the movie reviews, and you can check out his film reviews. But I'm sure we will discuss Planet of the Apes on tomorrow's broadcast at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Pacific. Josh Wickett, that is Saturday, August 6th. We'll be having Olivia Ebanks, her husband, Rudy Ebanks. He'll be on the program this Sunday, August 7th at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. And then the second program, Sunday evening, Eric Green, he'll be on the program to discuss his book, Planet of the Apes. This will be the only time during the blackout that we have a non-black person on, and the only reason is because Planet of the Apes, I think a lot of folks, they've been posting on Facebook that they're going to see the film. I think it's relevant, constructive, so I'm making an exception just for this, and then the rest of the time it'll be black people. But very busy, tune in, and we'll be back tomorrow. Invest in the cows. If you think it's constructive, the wish list is at Amazon.com under Gus T Renegade, and Justice's blog, justdojusticetoday.blogspot.com. We'll be back tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. I hope the white people do not act too racist at the movies. Cal signing out.